Hello, listeners. This is Jaylene
and Marissa.
You're listening to the Dystopian Digest podcast. This week's episode is going to be about exploring addiction as we dive deeper into the world of Fahrenheit 451, a classic dystopian novel by the infamous author Ray Bradbury. For this book, we will be focusing on the world's addiction, overconsumption, and effects on the people's mental, emotional, and physical state. But before we get far into that, here's a quick summary for some of our listeners who haven't read the novel yet. Fahrenheit 451 takes place in a dystopian future where printed books are outlawed and firefighters' jobs are now to destroy books as they are seen as harmful and dangerous. The story follows the perspective of Guy Montag, a firefighter who, after meeting a curious girl, begins a journey of self-reflection, realization, and struggle between him and the majority of the ideals of the world. Before we dive into the world of Fahrenheit, let's focus on our topic, addiction. Marissa, can you explain to us what addiction is?
Yes, when we read into the biology of addiction, we can find that drugs and alcohol can hijack your brain when the pleasure circuits in the brain get overwhelmed. People with addiction tend to lose control over their actions and start to crave and seek out any substance, no matter the cost, due to the fact that addiction rewires their nervous system to crave that substance. This can turn very risky very fast, as those who struggle with addiction can harm their relationships with family, friends, and in some cases, could end up losing their jobs as they continue to seek substances they feel are needed to survive. In fact, according to the American Addiction Center, a study was conducted in the year 2023 that revealed that 2.4 million American adults, which is 7.9%, suffered from both a mental health disorder and a substance use disorder, or co-occurring disorders in the past year.
I see. How does this affect the person?
During our research, we found that some early signs of addiction include sleep difficulties, memory problems, and a rapid increase in the amount of medication needed, according to an article by News and Health. Do you have anything else to add?
Yes, now that we talked more about what addiction is and its consequences, let's compare addiction with the characters in Fahrenheit. For example, Guy Montag, the protagonist of the story, is shown to have a sort of addiction to burning books. As you've seen in the beginning of the book, Bradbury thoroughly describes Montag burning books in a sort of trance. And when done, he's revealed to have a fierce grin on page 2. Through this scene, Bradbury describes how Montag finds pleasure in burning books and his craving to burn even more. Now that we've discussed Montag, let's move on to another character, Mildred, Montag's wife.
Within Fahrenheit, citizens are encouraged to have fun and focus on different entertainment outlets provided and built by the governments as a way to distract people from the bad going on throughout their world. Many citizens are negatively affected by this, including Mildred, as she struggles with an addiction to sleeping pills as a result of overconsumption of media. On page 11, the book quotes, "The small crystal bottles of sleeping tablets, which earlier today had been filled with 30 capsules and which now lay uncapped and empty in the light of the tiny flare, reveals this addiction." Describing how Mildred had an increased need for the amount of tablets for a dose to effectively work to a point of dangerous levels of consumption, as Montag finds her half dead due to an overdose. As we discussed earlier, some symptoms of addiction include sleep difficulties, memory problems, and a rapid increase in the amount of medication needed. We can also see how addiction has affected Mildred, where she struggles with memory issues, as neither Guy nor Mildred can remember how they met. Now that we've seen a more personal perspective of addiction within Fahrenheit, let's dive deeper into some other citizens' experiences.
Within the world of Fahrenheit, there is a TV-like electronic that takes up an entire wall and can be upgraded and installed into surrounding walls. Montag and Mildred own this device, and it's located within the parlor, and Mildred herself has a dependency on this electronic and refers to it as her family. People's dependency on this device can be seen when Mildred and her friends were watching within the parlor, and Montag decides to turn it off, as described on page 90 when Montag reached inside the parlor wall and pulled the main switch. In surprise, Mildred and her friends turned slowly and looked with unconcealed irritation and then dislike at Montag. Okay, that's all for today's episode of Dystopian Digest. Thank you for watching, and always thanks to our researcher Alex for finding all the facts to make this episode possible.
And don't forget to tune in next week for a new installment of Dystopian Digest. Bye!
Bye!